Over the last year, I've spent a lot of time building an interfaith coalition and forming deep relationships, connections with Christian clergy. And I've noticed a fascinating difference between Jewish clergy, or Jews for that matter, and Christian clergy. When they're trying to make a decision, trying to figure something out, my Christian friends will often say, I'm going to pray on that. And at first it struck me as very strange. Why are you going to pray on that? You should be deciding on that. But over time I realized that when my Christian colleagues are saying, I'm going to pray on that, they mean a sense of deep discernment, bringing the decision to God's presence, waiting long enough to kind of really feel something, to hear what's right, not just what's urgent and what comes up quickly. I think it's a sense of humility and accountability, that I'm not my own highest authority. So this week I decided to try it, to let prayer guide me. And I opened up our Siddur and let the words just wash over me and see if anything called out to me. Trying to pray on that, what should I do in this moment? And then it kind of happened at Wednesday night Minyan. I was davening the Amida, the standing silent prayer, and my eyes fell upon a phrase that I've literally recited, and I did the math on this, tens of thousands of times before, and I guess I never really heard it. The phrase is Matzmiach Yeshua. Matzmiach from the word tzemach, right? Plants to grow. Yeshua, deliverance. Meaning, referring to God as the one who causes deliverance to sprout forth, or the one who helps redemption grow. Matzmiach Yeshua is not some bolt of lightning that suddenly changes everything, but it describes God as the one who is growing something over time, planting, nurturing, tending, coaxing life from what looks like dead ground. God is not merely the one who sustains, as the rest of the paragraph says, the living by supporting the falling, healing the sick, loosening the chains of the bound. But God is the one who is planting the seeds and cultivating a future that we can't even see yet. As Nadav will lead us in this prayer in a few minutes, right before the Kedusha, right before we sanctify God's name together, God is Matzmiach Yeshua. And of course, if this is who God is, this is who we are, or at least who we are supposed to be. We are meant to work in that soil of salvation, the place where redemption sprouts from the earth, because we are God's hands in this world. It's a good frame for this month. This is the Hebrew month of Shvat, and as Tu B'Shvat approaches the birthday of the trees, we're getting into that mood. It's a season that looks frozen, but there's hidden work that's happening. The sap is rising in the trees, under the bark and beneath the soil. Life is beginning to move. Redemption is beginning to sprout. But of course, look outside or feel outside, and it's cold. It's really, really cold. Literally and metaphorically. And it's full of ice. Friends, this has been and remains a challenging time. We are witnessing things that are shaking us. People afraid to drive to work. People afraid to pick up their children. People afraid to go to the courthouse, to the hospital, to their churches. We've seen our government turning on people with a brutality that seems unrecognizable. Not only, of course, on undocumented immigrants, not only on those without papers, but on people who are targets because of their skin color, because of their language, because of their neighborhood. And then these masked government forces are acting more and more like dangerous gangs who act with impunity, unaccountable, and protected by those in power. My friends, this is not a normal time. The killing of Renee Good, ironically someone who is just trying to do good, her story has become, I think, a wake-up call. It's calling us to act. Beyond her terrible death, I think what disturbed me the most was witnessing what took place in the aftermath. People trying to give help to her were being prevented. Officers who didn't allow a doctor to come forward. Officers who didn't move their vehicles so an ambulance could come and provide assistance. People standing around and smiling and laughing. The intimidation of bystanders and the pepper spray as people stood in shock. We are not in a normal time. So what are we to do? Let's pray on that. Our Torah portion this morning, Parashat Bo, is not only ancient history and the amazing story of our people's exodus. I think it's a spiritual training manual that our people have used and that we can use in a moment like this. Parashat Bo, of course, the story of redemption, the story of moving from slavery to freedom, from the narrowness of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, to the possibility of liberation. It's a story of people learning that oppression is not inevitable, that history can bend, that a different future can be born. But here's one of the strangest and I think deepest moves of the entire narrative. Before the people leave Egypt, before this sprint out, before they get to the sea, before they sing their song of redemption, God pauses and says something like this. I'm paraphrasing in my own words in case you're wondering about the translation. By the way, God says, this night is going to be a remembrance forever. You will reenact this, you will institutionalize this, you will teach this. Here's what you guys need to do. I always imagine Moses and Aaron like juggling all the logistics. They've got to get out of there, all of the people, and they're just like, what? Why all of this now? Why all of this? Children are crying, elders are exhausted, there's blood on the doorposts, all of the packing. Why do we have to think first about this moment being preserved for all time? I think God is reminding them that redemption is not a one-time event. God is Matzmiach Yeshua. God is urging us to a redemption that needs tending to grow. But of course, what does that mean? If we're going to need redemption throughout all time, it means that there will be new Egypts. There will be new forms of slavery, new forms of cruelty, new forms of fear, as our people know all too well. And therefore, we must remember the story of Egypt not merely as the past, but in fact as a training. The Mishnah is really powerful on this. B'chol dor v'dor chayav adam lirod et atzmo ki'ilu hu yatsa miMitzrayim. In every generation, we are obligated to see ourselves as if we went out of Egypt. The Exodus is not simply something that happened in the past, something that happened to them, but it's something that's happening and happens to us again and again, maybe in different disguises, maybe in different ways, but we are called to respond. So what are we asked to do at this inflection point? Let's pray on that. The Torah gets very practical, as is its wont. In the same chapter, with the very same urgency, the Torah says, "V'im him'at habayit mihiyot niseh, ve'lakachu shcheno hakarov el beito b'michsat nefashot." If the household is too small for a lamb, right? Everyone was going to have this meal before they had to run, and then they were going to only be stuck with matzah. They had to eat this lamb. But if the house is too small for it, you bring your neighbor in. You bring your neighbors together. If your household is too small, make a group. Share the burden. Get organized. Be ready. Because in other words, redemption is not a solo act. And that brings me to a very important nuance that I want to stop and share honestly. This is a particularly hard time for us as Jews. Anti-Semitism is all around us, and it is shape-shifting. It appears in old forms and in new ones, and is often precisely when Jews are trying to stand with others. Saw this with the rabbi being excluded from a Martin Luther King commemoration this past week. I spoke with one of my friends, Josh Radner, who's the rabbi of the Pasadena Jewish Temple and Center this week. His was the synagogue that was burned down in the LA fires a year ago. And they had a gathering, the 1-year anniversary of the fire. They had a commemoration for their community, both to grieve and to start to rebuild. And 3 days after this commemoration, someone spray painted on the remaining wall of the building, ironically the western wall, "Rest in peace, Renee," and then an expletive, Zionism. Hate aimed at Jews and aimed at dividing us. It was an attempt to conflate wholly different things, to say that those who terrorize immigrant communities and Jews who believe in Israel's right to exist are the same. It was an attempt to split coalitions, to destroy solidarity, to make people feel that justice work comes with litmus tests and exclusions. This is a tricky time. Because yes, some of the people we may work with may not be aligned with every part of our core identity as Jews. But we don't walk away. We have to walk carefully. We have to remember that Matzmiach Yeshua is a calling that we cannot ignore. Matzmiach Yeshua, growing things, is a messy process. There's a reason that I struggle to get in the garden, because it's kind of messy. The things I plant don't always take root. The weather changes, the soil's rocky, but yet we still plant. We water, we fertilize, we protect the vulnerable shoots. Because redemption doesn't usually come in these epic moments of the splitting of the sea. It's more like a garden. So let redemption grow. Let redemption grow in the soil of salvation here and now in this cold season of Shvat. Because this is not someone else's problem. The threats are not only to people who are undocumented. They include plenty of people who are documented. People with TPS, temporary protective status, because they're fleeing disasters in other countries. And we told them, come here, give us, you're tired, you're poor. Those yearning to be free, those in need, that's our country. That's what we needed before the Shoah, before the Holocaust. Those people with TPS, like those from Haiti, now they are leaving with the dread that their protections will end next week. If you say maybe, why do I care? What does that have to do with me? Well, forget all the values. Just care about the tens of thousands of elders and seniors who depend on this labor in their nursing homes and home care. But of course, really care. Because when a society treats people as disposable, everyone becomes less safe. Care because our democracy cannot survive without due process. And care because it impacts even us here at Temple Emunah. I spoke with one member of our community whose parent is undocumented, afraid to travel at all, afraid to visit their children and grandchildren. Yesterday, as I said before the prayer for our country, I attended this prayerful, faithful clergy march, not a protest, really just a chant-filled religious experience to lift up our religious voices. We walked together and gathered and prayed in the rotunda of the State House. Such a beautiful place, such a powerful place. And through song and call and response and silence, we made a commitment. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, as our Torah teaches. We will not stand idly by. We carried ourselves into this public space as a form of responsibility, an insistence that protecting the vulnerable is a core faith value. And of course, let me be honest, standing there did not solve everything. But as we went, Rabbi Fish and I and many others, it did something holy. We moved prayer into our legs. It moved some of the anguish into presence. It reminded us that despair is not a strategy, and neither is isolation. So what are we asked to do right now? Let's pray on that. And let the prayer lead to something concrete. Don't let what's happening fade into the background. I know it can be overwhelming, but stay awake. Pay attention. Get connected to immigrant support and accompaniment networks in our region. We're already supporting an immigrant family as a community. We're already supporting immigrants. What can we do? How can we do more? Call elected officials. Demand accountability. Right now, they're really hearing from one side. It's not the side that cares about immigrants. Demand accountability, due process, humane policies. Let's remember what basic kindness is, no matter what the legal issues are. Donate to organizations that offer mutual aid and legal support. Check in on people you might know, people you might employ who are immigrants. Check on those who are living with fear. When our community calls for your presence, show up. Let's talk about what we can do. As our great teacher, Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, after marching with Dr. King and Selma in 1965, famously said, I felt my legs were praying. My friends, we need praying legs right now. We need hands that act. We need to work in the soil of salvation, and let's pray on that. And then together, let redemption grow. Shabbat Shalom.